All right, today we're concluding our theme of April showers, which are showers of blessings from God if we don't step in the way and block them from ourselves. And today's title of the talk is From the Basement to the Penthouse. And, you know, I was asking myself, what can basements and penthouses have to do with blessings? Well, you know, if you think about it, everything. If we think of basements and penthouses as metaphors for where we hang out in our minds. So, where do we live in our minds? In the basement? Or do we live in the penthouse? Because wherever we live, predominantly, not all the time, because I know I take trips to the basement sometimes, but wherever we live most of the time, this is a place from which we're creating our world. Wherever we live is a place of blessing or not. So remember my Ernest Holmes quote from last week, if you were here. Life is a blessing or a curse according to what we make of it. And this is what Buddha meant when he said, all we are is a result of what we have thought. And that's what Jesus meant when he said, it is done unto you as you believe. And it's what Ernest Holmes meant when he said, change your thinking, change your life. But it's more than just thinking. It's really the sum total of our consciousness, everything that we have thought. And what is consciousness? Here's my definition of consciousness. Consciousness is a combination of our thoughts, our attitudes, our beliefs, our values, our feelings, and our actions. It's all of that, all of it going on. So when you have that individual negative thought, you think, oh no, what did I just create? Nah, nothing. We can just say cancel, because that had no effect. It's a combination of everything that we're thinking. And whatever is in our consciousness, we experience in our lives, the totality of what's in our consciousness. Ernest Holmes says in The Science of Mind on page 126, whatever we think, act, believe in, feel, visualize, vision, image, read about, talk about, in fact, all processes which affect or impress us at all are going into the subjective state of our thought. And whatever goes into the subjective state of our thought tends to return again as some condition. The key word is tends. So, we, and we alone, control our destiny. So what does the basement of consciousness symbolize? Well, I think that's kind of obvious, don't you think? Do you even know what a basement is? I mean, how many of us were born in California? But how many of us have been to places where there are basements? I remember seeing one for the first time when I was 18 and went to visit cousins in Maryland. It was like, wow, theirs was kind of a dark place where they just stored stuff, you know, and then I saw cousins in Boston, and they had a basement too, but they turned it into a dark room and an extra little bedroom. But boy, there were no windows. It's not like on HGTV now where they have the windows and they look like whole other houses. But let's talk about what some of the qualities, basement qualities are. You know, I don't mean the basement that's fixed up to be the cool game room, but how would you describe the typical basement? What would you say? Dark, cold, damp, closed in, yeah, maybe bugs, you know, maybe areas that's hard to see into the corners or that sort of thing. How about basement consciousness qualities? What would those be? If you were thinking about if your consciousness were in the basement, what would those qualities be? Negative emotions, perhaps? Fear? Good. Closed in. Sense of, intimidation, maybe. Instant perceptions of hostility. Easily taking offense at everything. Sense of separation. Feeling violated. Victimhood. So, do we ever feel very blessed hanging around in the basement consciousness? Is that a place where we feel blessed or feel that we are enjoying a blessing there? Probably not. So what would you consider to be penthouse qualities? Not consciousness, but just penthouse qualities. How would you describe a penthouse? Bright, airy, light, spacious, yeah? How about, Ornate, and you could see. Couldn't you see? You'd see a lot, right? Spaciousness. Well, how about penthouse consciousness qualities? What would those be? Understanding ourselves as spiritual beings, living with feelings of well-being, abundance, faith, love, compassion, Oneness with the whole, because you can see it all, so you can feel that you're one with it all, right? Understanding the ability of Spirit to do all for us by working through us. Belief in the inherent goodness of life. Awakening to who we are in Spirit. I'd say at that point we'd feel a little more blessed, wouldn't we? Wouldn't we feel that we were totally blessed living in that condition? So how do we move from basement consciousness to the penthouse consciousness and thereby experience a blessed life? Well, Wayne Dyer once said, the elevator to success, and we could change this to a blessed life, is closed today. You have to take the stairs one step at a time. And that reminds me of a sign that I just saw on Facebook that said, life does not come with a remote. Get up and change yourself. So, what are some of the steps on this stairway from the basement to the penthouse that we could take this morning? I want to give you 3 flights of stairs. The first flight of stairs is resist not what is. It is what it is. Think about this for a minute. It is what it is. Or is it? We often talk about seeing conditions out there, manifestations, and they are what they are, but they're changeable. Form is always changeable. So it may seem simplistic, but think about Stephen Covey's circle of influence idea, and this is from his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Look at what is within and without your circle of influence. As a personal example, when my daughter's bike was stolen a few weeks ago, I really had no control over the situation. I couldn't go right down there and find who did it and, rescue it and find it and all that. I could only choose what my response was going to be. And interestingly, my husband had the same response as well. We chose to, well, first we checked in with our feelings about the whole thing, got over the initial anger there, and then we chose that we would just decide to know that only good could come from this. However it looked, only good would come from this experience. And we really had no idea how that was going to happen because we were, falling back into lamenting about losing the money we'd spent and she not having a bike and how were we going to find her another one and just a lot of the little details. No, just know that only good's going to come from this. So she came home for Easter break, was looking online for bikes, searching for her bike, because they said to keep checking Craigslist to see if her bike showed up, and of course it didn't, but there were a few calls made in there, and then she went back to school and had started making calls to buy a used bike. And the day that she had set up an appointment to go look at a bike, she found her bike. It was in an area away from where she had lost it, where it had been stolen because it had been with all of her friends' bikes and had been gone, and there was her bike. And she went over and she just unlocked the thing. So someone either knew we don't even know all the details, but, and maybe she didn't actually lock it and left it on the combo or something, and they just took it, it was an easy take or whatever. She just fixed the combo, took it, and then went and bought another lock, and she has her bike back. Like, oh, okay, hey, that's great. So I think the positive outcome is that she really appreciates having a nice bike now, and she takes the time to make sure the tumbler, and she has another key lock, so she's double protected it there. And she also realizes the value a little bit more after shopping for a bike and what that was going to cost her. So when you say, I accept what is for now, you let go of the resistance, which allows you to begin to move out of the basement of consciousness there. So remember Ernest Holmes' statement in what is called the Sermon by the Sea. Let us be a people that are for something and against nothing. Look at the people who spend so much time and energy being against something. And whatever comes from that, really nothing. But when you're for something, that's when we move forward. Jesus said, resist, not evil. Don't allow evil to take over, but don't give it any energy either. Resist, not evil. And from the standpoint of creation, I'm really getting why we don't want to resist the what is. We'll just get more of it. Because all of the energy, the emotions, the feelings that we're giving it, whatever we focus our attention on, we get more of. So we've got to be clear on what that is. So say with me, will you please? I accept what is for now. I accept what is for now. These stairs from the basement to the penthouse are really more like a pyramid, if you can envision a pyramid, rather than a staircase, because each step is a foundation on which the next one is built. So we're going to come to the second flight of stairs here. And this is adopt the attitude that the universe is conspiring for your good. And I love that. I just love the word conspiring. The universe is conspiring for your good. So say that with me, please. The universe is conspiring for my good. Ernest Holmes says there's nothing in the universe that limits you or that would or could desire to limit you. There's nothing in the universe that withholds from you, because in doing so, it would withhold from itself. You are some part of its purpose. Therefore, the Spirit seeks, urges, pushes against you to fulfill itself. Have you ever felt that urge, that divine urge, that push? Moving up to the penthouse consciousness means that no matter what is going on around us, we continue to know that the universal good desires to be expressed as our individual good, no matter what others say or do, no matter what else is going on around us. So to illustrate, there's a story about a man who lived by the side of the road and he sold hot dogs. He was very hard of hearing, so he didn't have a radio. And he had trouble with his eyes, so he had no newspaper. And he didn't watch much TV. But he was happy selling his great hot dogs. He put a sign on the highway, and the sign was telling him how good these hot dogs were. He stood by the side of the road and said, "Hey, you want to buy a great hot dog?" And people came and they bought. So he increased his meat and bun order. He bought a bigger stove, and he really started to expand his trade. Then one day, his son came home from college to help him. His well-meaning son said, "Dad, haven't you heard the news about the recession? The economy is really bad. The unemployment situation is terrible, and the energy situation is worse." Whereupon the hot dog man thought, well, my son's been to college. He reads the newspapers and listens to the radio. He ought to know. So the father cut down on his meat and bun order. He took down his advertising signs, and he no longer bothered to stand by the road and yell, "Want to buy my hot dogs?" And his hot dog sales fell almost overnight. "You're right, son," the hot dog man said to his boy. "We certainly are in the middle of a bad recession." Interesting. Don't let naysayers, even if they're well-meaning, draw you down to the basement. Remember, the universe is conspiring for your good. So sometimes we go in the opposite directions. When things start changing for the better, I know I've done this, and they start going well, we self-sabotage. Has anybody done that to themselves? Have you ever been in that situation where, gosh, we think it's too good to last. Wow, this is too good to be true. Or, gosh, I know that I've received a check in the mail, and not now, but in the past, I have been known to go, well, I wonder what's going to come up that's going to take this extra money. Is the refrigerator going to break? Is the car going to break down? And it always seemed that, the money would appear, but then it would go back out again. So I don't do that anymore. I just go, wow, thank you. Having fun, send more money. It works for me. So I think a lot of times we're afraid we're going to jinx it, or we don't know how to handle our good. So say with me, nothing is too good to last.
Nothing is too good to last.
Nothing is too wonderful to happen.
Nothing is too wonderful to happen.
And I deserve it.
I deserve it.
You bet. So now we're on to the third flight of stairs, choosing to have a spiritual experience with life. And we may need a little help with this. Dear God, so far today, I've done all right. I have not gossiped at all today. I have not lost my temper, been greedy, grumpy, nasty, selfish, or overindulgent. I am thankful for that. But I'm going to get out of bed in a moment, and I really need some help after that. Baby steps. Ernest Holmes in The Science of Mind on page 445 says, we need spiritual experience, a first-hand knowledge of life and reality. There is no medium between God and us, nothing between life and living, between heaven and hell, but an idea. But an idea has no real value until it becomes an experience. In conversation, we assume great knowledge of religion and philosophy, but how much do we really experience? We can only know that which we experience. All great religions have taught truth, but it means nothing to us unless it becomes our truth. We need spiritual experience. We shall never know peace until we embody it. We shall never know truth until we become truth. When we cannot know God unless we sense God within our being. in our own being. The Spirit is ever giving, but we must take. What life does for us must be done through us. Spiritual experience is deep, calm, and self-assertive. It is the result of actually realizing that presence, which binds all together in one complete whole, being one with the whole. Spiritual experience is a fact. It springs from within, coming from that never-failing fountain of life which quenches every thirst, whose source is in eternity, the wellspring of self-existence. It is a revelation of the self to the self, putting us back on track of our own self-independence on spirit and our own at-one-ment with reality. And if you want to go back and reread that, I was going to say that's on page 445 of the Science of Mind textbook. That really sums it up. So the words from today's inspirational reading, which was on page 306, they were really good counsel here. They really related here. Began to dwell on the magnitude of the universe. Think how many stars there are, how many fish there are in the seas, how many grains of sand there are in the beaches. Think, see, feel the activity, radiate the life. You know, the world is filled with abundance. There is no lack. So I want to conclude with the parable of the farmer who owned the old mule. I've told this story before. Do you remember my story of the old mule? I'm sure some of you have heard it, but it goes really well with our theme today. So this mule fell into the farmer's well. The farmer heard the mule braying, or whatever mules do when they fall into wells. I haven't seen that happen. And after assessing the situation, the farmer sympathized with the mule, but decided that neither the mule nor the well was worth the trouble of saving. Instead, he called his neighbors together and told them what had happened, and enlisted them to help haul dirt to bury the old mule in the well and put him out of his misery. Well, initially, as you can understand, the old mule was hysterical. But as the farmer and his neighbors continued shoveling and the dirt hit his back, a thought struck him. It suddenly dawned on him that every time a shovel loaded with dirt landed on his back, he should shake it off and step up. And this he did, blow after blow. Shake it off, step up. Shake it off, step up. Shake it off, step up. He repeated to encourage himself, no matter how painful the blows or distressing the situation seemed, the old mule fought the panic and just kept right on shaking it off and stepping up. It wasn't long before the old mule, battered and exhausted, stepped triumphantly over the wall of the well. Well, what seemed like it would bury him actually blessed him, all because of the manner in which he handled his adversity. And that is life. If we face our lives from a penthouse consciousness, then whatever comes our way will not bury us. Instead, it will bless us. So remember, these are the steps to how to shake it off and step it up. By accepting what is as a starting point and establishing the foundation and the base. This is what we must do, because we have to, wherever we are, that's where we are. We have to start right where we are. We must do this the first time and all the time. So next, the second step is choose to believe that the universe is conspiring for our good. If we lift up we lift up out of the basement, we look at a new life, we see what is, and we see it differently. Finally, by making a conscious choice to have a spiritual experience with all that we do, because it's all spiritual, right? It's all God. We reach that point of the pyramid. And remember, this point cannot exist without the two foundational levels. But the view from the top is pretty spectacular. We might even say that from this viewpoint, that we are absolutely, completely, and totally blessed. And so it is.